Hello, my favorite bookish people. We're back once again with another reading wrap up. October was actually a record-breaking month personally for me because I managed to read 11 books, which is the most books I have ever read in 1 month before in my life. And yes, many of those were novellas, but still, technically, I can say I read 11 books in 1 month. That's wild. I will say though, a little disclaimer to that, it doesn't matter how many books you read, it just matters if you enjoyed your time. I think as a booktuber, when I started this, the goal was like to read as many books as you can per month, per year, whatever, to meet your reading goal. But that's not what this is about. And I'm just trying to remind myself of that. But still, it is pretty cool that I got to read 11 books this month. A few stats. As far as the genres that I read this month, it was very spooky for me because I read 6 horror books, 3 fantasies, and 2 romances. Technically, one of the fantasies was like a fantasy romance, equal in both genres. I really did have such a fun month. If you watch my channel regularly, you might have seen that I did a horror novella reading vlog, which was really fun. It was kind of wild. I definitely recommend going and checking it out if you're interested. But with that vlog, the first book that I read this month was Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw. Like I said, this is a horror novella. It's super short. In this, we're following 5 friends. One of the friends rents out a haunted house for 2 of the other friends who are getting married, and that's their wedding gift, is to camp out in this haunted house. Kind of a strange wedding gift, I know. So they all go to this haunted house and some weird stuff starts happening. There's a creepy ghost bride. Reality kind of starts to blur a little bit and someone ends up passing away. I gave this a 2 stars. I would have DNF'd this if I wasn't reading it for a reading vlog. I'm trying more and more to DNF books that I do not like, but when I'm doing a reading vlog, I do try to see it out just so that I can give my full thoughts for the vlog. If I didn't read it in a reading vlog, it would have been a DNF, and that's saying something because it's only like 110 pages or something like that. It kind of felt like nothing at all happened in this. It leaned more towards like flowery and poetic writing rather than spook factor, which was definitely interesting. I will give the author that. She does know how to set the scene, but I definitely wish this was spookier than it was. Looking at the cover, I thought this was going to be like so terrifying. But yeah, no, I would not recommend this. Next up on my horror novella journey, I read Helpmeet by Nabin Ruthnam. This follows an older couple in the 1900s, and the husband is dying of a mysterious illness. By the way, this book is like literally 58 pages or something like that. The wife is a nurse, and so she has kind of stopped working, and she's just kind of trying to nurse her husband into death, basically. But the husband starts saying some very odd and creepy stuff about how he's like being visited in the night and stuff like that. Both of them decide that they are going to move and travel back to the husband's childhood home because he just wants to be there when he dies. And so they do that. They head back to his childhood home, and then some very odd and wild things begin to happen. This is involving body horror that really shocked me as kind of like the first book that I've read with like extreme body horror. This was pretty shocking for me. I ended up giving this one a 3 stars. It's not one that I would recommend to just anybody. It feels so strange to say it and to come to terms with it in myself because I always thought that I would be a girly that would absolutely hate body horror, but I actually didn't mind it. When words on a page can get me to react in any sort of way, even if it's like shock, like my jaw on the ground, the rating is going to get bumped up. It's so crazy to me that this is like 50 something pages long because the beginning of this felt like 300 pages of nothing. It felt like I was reading forever because nothing was happening in the beginning. And I think that is the part that like really brought it down. I think it was supposed to be like a creepy, like crawling towards a big bang at the end, but it was just boring. If you like a very strange story with body horror, then maybe give this a shot. It'll only take you one sitting to read. Next up, again on my horror novella kick, I read The Haar by David Sodergren. This is about a woman who lives on the Scottish seaside in this little village, and she's grieving the loss of her husband, all while this guy is coming in and trying to buy up all of the houses in her little village because he wants to tear them down and make a golf course. And she is one of the few people that is refusing to give away her house. Her husband proposed to her in a cave on the seaside by their village, and so one day she decides to take a walk down there. She goes down there, and the son of the man who's trying to buy up all of the houses is down there and actually beats her up, like so bad. By the way, this is like a 70-year-old woman. He just like beats the crap out of her and leaves her for dead on the beach. Eventually she wakes up and she starts kind of crawling her way home. I think she has like a broken ankle or something, and so she's really not doing good. She's crawling her way home when she comes across a blob, a squishy, yucky blob of something on a rock on her way home. And she thinks that she's discovered a new kind of animal that nobody has ever discovered before. And when she touches it, it completely heals her and actually makes her like a couple years younger too. And she can also hear it speaking to her in her mind, and it also needs help. And so she decides to run home, grab a bucket, put it in a bucket, and bring it home to her house and put it in her bathtub and give it water and try to nurse it back to health, whatever it is. I won't spoil it too much, but basically this creature definitely does a good job at attempting to help this woman get rid of all of the people that want to take her home from her. I will say that much. I ended up giving this one also a 3 stars. This was just absolutely wild. Another one that I would have DNF'd if I wasn't reading it for a reading vlog. Again, so much body horror. This one was just a little bit over the top as far as body horror for me. So, I mean, this monster was literally like ripping people to shreds when they came to her house. And it was a lot. It was a lot, and it was just so weird. So weird. And again, if you know me, you know that shock factor and weird are 2 things that I actually absolutely love in my books. So this was very difficult to rate. Just like Helpmeet, because my mind is like having a war with itself, because it's like that was so gross and like so weird, but also the fact that I'm like sitting here in shock and I'm just like my mind is reeling and reeling and reeling about it. I feel like that says something about the book. I feel like that says something positive about the book, actually. When you just cannot wrap your mind around a book and you just think it's so wild. I don't know, something about that. I just tend to like it. Anyway, taking a break from the horror novellas, I ended up reading A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. This was actually the first T. Kingfisher book that I've ever read. This is a retelling of the Brothers Grimm Goose Girl. I've never actually read that Brothers Grimm short story, but I actually kind of want to now that I've read this one. This is about a mother and a little girl. They live in a village, and the mother is essentially a sorceress, if you will. And her mother uses her womanly wiles to make money. We'll just say, I guess, basically when her main client says that he doesn't want to see her anymore, the mother and daughter need to move to a different village in order to woo a man who essentially she wants to marry for money. We're getting the perspective of the daughter, and we're also getting the perspective of the man that she is trying to marry's sister. So the sister can sense that there's something wrong with this sorceress. She doesn't know she's a sorceress, but she can sense there's something wrong. And Cordelia, the daughter, kind of starts coming to terms with the fact that her mother is evil. And in the end, the sister and Cordelia end up teaming up to figure out a solution. I ended up giving this one a 3.75 stars. I did enjoy myself, but I found it to be pretty slow, actually. I think at the end there was, again, like a kind of horror shock factor situation that had me like, oh, shook for a second. I think because I wasn't expecting that, but I did just find it to drag a little bit. I enjoyed the characters. I thought the buildup was pretty good. I just wish there was more happening throughout the book. Next, I finished Reckless by Elsie Silver, which is the 4th book in the Chestnut Spring series, and I gave it a 5 stars. In this, we are following Winter and Theo. Theo is a bull rider, and Winter is the sister of one of the other girls in the series. Everyone kind of looks at Winter like she is basically bitchy and just closed off and no fun. Everyone just thinks that she has a stick up her butt, basically. But Theo, oh dear sweet Theo, he loves that about her. And also, he can see right through her. Like I said, I gave this a 5 stars. I absolutely loved this. It's been my favorite of the series so far. And if I'm being 100% honest, I think that Theo Silva is actually my favorite book boyfriend, specifically from the romance genre ever, that I have ever read. My number one man. I love him so much. The way that he takes care of Winter is just, it's something else. It's just something else. He's literally the ideal man. And I also found myself being able to relate to Winter a lot. Overall, like I loved it so much. It was so good. Next up, the last horror novella that I read for my horror novella reading vlog was We Need to Do Something by Max Booth III. In this, we're following a family that essentially just all hate each other. It's a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister. The parents are literally on the brink of divorce. The daughter is a teenager and she just hates everybody. The daughter and the son fight all the time. And then one day, a tornado sweeps through their town and they take shelter in the bathroom when a tree ends up falling through their house and blocking the door to get out of the bathroom. There's also no window in the bathroom. So their only way out of the bathroom is literally through the door, and they can't open the door because there's a giant tree in the way. This novella takes place over, I want to say, like 3 to 5 days, probably somewhere in there. Maybe it's like 3 to 7 days. Like it could be like a week long, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But this is a book where the reality kind of starts to bend and blur because they are not getting any water or food. So our characters are delirious. And slowly but surely, they begin to kind of realize that maybe what happened was not a tornado, or something else happened after the tornado, and they are essentially like no longer in the world that they used to know, whether that be because the world that they used to know changed so much for some reason, or whether that be because they kind of jumped realities or something. This was another one that was absolutely crazy, and another one that had body horror. If you watched that vlog, you know that I was trying to pick a book that didn't have any more body horror, but I just ended up picking a bunch of books with body horror. This one was pretty gruesome at the end. I ended up actually giving this one a 3.75 stars, which is wild. Again, it's like, again, my brain is warring with itself because I'm like, why did you enjoy that, Emma? Like, it's kind of up that you enjoyed that, not gonna lie. So part of my brain is like, no, you cannot rate it 3.75 stars. That's way too high.
You're a weird person if you think this book was good.
But then the other part of my brain is like, I just did. And I can't really explain it. Again, I think it's just, it all comes down to that it was like super unique and very, very shocking. And I was literally like screaming at my Kindle while reading it. And something about that feeling, like if I can get intense feelings, no matter what the feelings from a book, words on a page, I have to rate it higher. After that was all said and done, I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. In this, we're following Misery, and she is a vampire, and she is essentially set up by her father to marry the pack leader of the werewolves, whose name is Lo, all because they need a political alliance with them. They've been fighting with each other for like centuries, and Misery is essentially supposed to be the key to political alliance. I ended up giving this one a 3.5 stars. I was a little bit disappointed in it. I know this is kind of like a hit or miss. A lot of people either don't like it at all or really, really, really like it. And I feel like like I definitely fell in the middle. I enjoyed my time well enough with it. I think it was definitely like a good breakup for all of the other books that I was reading. And I definitely will be continuing the series with Mate. We'll see how I feel about Mate. I think there's supposed to be more books coming out in this series. And if I feel kind of like the same way about Mate, I might not continue on with the rest whenever she comes out with those. But it was good enough where I want to continue and see where Mate takes us. I found that I couldn't really feel the connection between Misery and Low. Obviously, this is like an enemies to lovers situation, which is usually one of my favorite tropes. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of felt like they weren't enemies for long enough, in my opinion, or I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was like their individual personalities that I didn't really vibe with, or I'm like racking my brain to think why I couldn't feel the connection between them, but I genuinely don't know. I just didn't feel a connection between them. And I think that's kind of mostly what brought it down, but also I just found Ali Hazelwood's writing a little bit cheesy. This was my first Ali Hazelwood book, so I'll definitely be picking up more of her work because I know this is kind of like outside of her normal genre. It was just average to me, good enough that I would recommend it, but not so good that I'm ecstatic about it, you know? Next up, I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. In this, we're following Noemi. It's in the 1950s in Mexico. Her cousin that grew up with her just recently got married and moved away. And then one day, Noemi and her father receive this disconcerting letter from Catalina, who is the cousin. It sounds like she's very scared and very confused, and she's urging someone to come and get her at once. So Noemi ends up going there and finds that her cousin's new family is very strange, very spooky, and they have a lot of rules that don't really make a lot of sense. They're very, very strict. And the longer that Noemi stays in this house, she begins to realize that the house itself is haunted. Her cousin is supposedly sick with tuberculosis, but her symptoms are not lining up with tuberculosis, so she is questioning this family's doctor. And the more that she starts to uncover about Catalina's illness, the more reality starts to blur and the more the house kind of takes over her mind, basically. I ended up giving this a 4.25 stars. I'm kind of debating on whether I want to keep it at that or bring it down to a 4 stars. I think that Silvia Moreno Garcia is a genius at setting the scene and building up, like starting slowly and kind of building up to a big bang at the end of her book. This was so atmospheric. The writing style really just threw you right into the book with Noemi. It was suspenseful. It was eerie. I really enjoyed my time, but I will say that I was slogging through it a little bit because of how flowery at times it was, but also because I just wish a little bit more was going on. I think once you hit like the 25% mark, there is like things going on and you're intrigued and it kind of pushes the story along. But that first 25%, I don't know if it's because I was like in a little bit of a slump because this was right after Reckless or what, but I just had a little bit of a hard time with the writing style. It's interesting because like I loved the book for its writing style, but also at the same time, the writing style made it slower. So yeah, I don't know. I think I might bring it down to a 4 stars actually because of how hard of a time I had with it. But at the same time, the last 50% of this was just like bing, 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 like so good. So yeah, I don't know. I'll think on it a little bit more. Next up, I read If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. This is a romance set in the 90s, and guys, God, this was the best fall romance ever. Not that I've read a lot of fall romance, but I genuinely don't think that anything would be able to top how good this was. We are following Michelle, who just lost her mother and her father is in the throes of grief. Her sister is going to school. Her parents have left her sister this bed and breakfast that they owned in Copper Run, Vermont, but her sister is finishing up school. So Michelle decides to go out there, and for I think a month, is it a month? Or no, it's 3 months. For 3 months, she's going to be taking care of the bed and breakfast before her sister takes over. But of course, when she gets there, there's a hot neighbor, and it's a small town, and he's a baker and bakes her things all the time. And she's grumpy and he's sunshine. I just absolutely loved it so much. I gave this a 4.5 stars. The fall vibes are just so good. Like anything fall, New England, this is so Gilmore Girls coded. Like if you're someone who who watches Gilmore Girls in the fall time, you absolutely need to read this. It was just so good. I loved every single character. Even the kids in this book were good. I just loved it. Gosh, it was so good. I think this is actually one of those books that's going to have to be like an annual reread for me because it's just so atmospheric and so perfect. It's just like one of those comfort movies that you watch every single year during a certain time of the year. The second to last book that I read last month was Slewfoot by Brom. This is a historical fiction, I think, set in the 1600s. Our main character, Abatha, is sold off as a wife, and so when she gets to her new colony with her husband, it is a small Puritan village, very religious, very patriarchal, and our main character, Abatha, is just a little bit too eccentric for Puritan culture. And so people already kind of don't really like her or look at her like she is a witch. And it doesn't help that she makes different spells and cures for people in the town. But anyways, her husband ends up passing away and her brother-in-law threatens to take their farm away from them. Her and her husband were essentially like rent to own the farm from her brother-in-law, and she has one more payment until she owns it. But when her husband dies, the brother-in-law assumes that she can't pay it and wants to take the farm back. And she's like, no, I'm going to pay it. And they are fighting back and forth, and he's determined to get the farm back, and she's determined not to let it go. All while deep in the forest, there is a spirit awakening, a forest god, if you will. And without giving too much away, the forest god ends up helping Abatha to keep her farm. But it's so much more than that, guys. I gave this book a 4.5 stars. I'm considering bumping it to a 5 stars. The only reason that I put it at a 4.5 stars was because of how intense it got at the end, like how gruesome. So I don't know, but it was so good. Oh my gosh, this was everything that I hoped and dreamed that it would be. I have had this book on my TBR for at least a year and a half now, and I put it off for so long because I was just so scared that it wasn't going to live up to what I wanted it to be. And this soared way over what I even expected of this. And I'm just so thrilled about that, because when does that ever actually happen? It's usually like my expectations are through the roof and the book can never even meet my expectations. But no, this was the opposite. This book blended all of my favorite like tropes and themes that I love about books so much. I love witchy vibes, historical fiction, takedown of the patriarchy, women's stories, revenge, justice, just gosh, it was so amazing and genuinely spooky. Like I read horror novellas in the beginning of the month to try and spook myself, and this is the book that spooked me. I didn't even go into this thinking that it was going to creep me out. I literally had a bad dream about this book. And if you've read it, the bad dream involved Samson. So if you know, genuinely, it scared me and like put me back together at the same time. The characters were so morally gray too. I absolutely love that. I can't. It was so good. So good. It makes me want to rate it a 5 stars. And the very last book that I read this month, guys, was The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is my first Leigh Bardugo book. It is fantasy, historical, takes place in Madrid. I don't know what year it takes place. I don't think it ever actually says what year it takes place. But we are following Lucia Catado. She's a scullion, and she uses just like basic magic to do her everyday chores and tasks for the house, until one day her mistress discovers that she has these talents, and her mistress starts to use her essentially as a party trick. So when she has parties, she brings out Lucia, and Lucia does her little tricks for them. But she ends up getting noticed by a very prominent figure who has past connections to the king. And this man sets up a tournament for people with magical skills that want to serve the king and serve the church. And so Lucia is entered into this competition with 3 other contestants to try and win the king's favor, essentially. So we have obviously historical, magic, fantasy. We have a competition aspect in this, and unexpectedly, I did not expect at all, romance. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars, you guys. I'm very glad that I didn't listen to the haters on this one because so many people talk about how this book is bad. They didn't like it at all. I really enjoyed this one, you guys. I think I especially loved how it was unexpectedly romantic. I did not think at all that this was going to be a love story in any way. I'm just very impressed by it, especially since this book gets so much hate. I can see maybe why people don't like it. Again, this is my first Leigh Bardugo, so I know that a lot of her other things are pretty fast-paced and exciting, so maybe that is why people didn't enjoy this one as much, because maybe they wanted it to be faster paced, because I will say it was slower paced, but especially this month after reading Mexican Gothic and this one, I have just realized that I really need to slow down when I'm reading books like this. When I start to think, oh, this is so slow, I need to immerse myself more in the story. That's kind of just like a sign to me that I'm not appreciating the story for what it is. And so in the beginning of this, I was starting to have that feeling, and then I just kept checking myself throughout the story. And I think that actually really helped me to be present in the story and to just really love the slow ride through the story. I say don't listen to the haters and definitely give this a shot. Yes, it's a little bit slow, but I feel like there was a lot of really fun twists and turns that I was not expecting, and a cutesy little romance side plot. As always, I would love to know if you guys have read any of the books that I read last month. What was your favorite book of the month last month? I would love to know. I hope you guys had a great month of reading in October, and I'm wishing you a great month of reading in November. But until next week, you guys, bye!